Hello, second graders, and welcome to week 2 of distance learning. Today I want to go over our schedule. We started this schedule last week and I think it went pretty well. It was really great to see a lot of you in office hours. I'm doing Zoom meetings during these times, and just a reminder, this is your chance to pop in, say hello. Today our group got to play some games and just visit with each other, and that was really nice. Parents, you too can also pop in at those times and ask questions or chat with me too. That's your choice. If you remember, I have us divided into some groups, but that doesn't have to be all of it. You boys and girls are more than welcome to bump in anytime Monday through Thursday from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. Parents, kids, if Zoom meetings are not an option for you, please reach out through Class Dojo and just let me know what way would be a better method to get in contact with you. Our meetings on Friday, I would love to see everybody. We had a small group of kids who weren't able to be with us on Friday. The kids that were there this past Friday came up with a good idea to do a little show and tell. So on Friday, if you're going to join us, take a minute and find something in your house that's important to you and see if you can come up with about 1 or 2 sentences of a description and a little bit of talk time to go with your object, and we'd love to take some time to do a little bit of show and tell. Last week, we got to play online Pictionary, which our small group did today during office hours, and that was a lot of fun too. So if we decide as a group to do that again this week, just make sure you have either your sticky notes that the district gave you and a writing tool or some scrap paper, whatever you've got, and maybe we'll have time to play that together again this week. So we're going to go into our lesson for today. Last week, we just had a reminder about how we need to be reading at home and living our reading lives at home. We talked about where we can do that and how to do that, the 3 steps to doing that. Find your materials, your reading materials, and then make sure you find your just right reading spot, and then get to work. 30 minutes a day is what we're working for right now. Well, today we're going to talk about tricky words. We have been learning about what to do with tricky words ever since kindergarten. I'm sure a lot of you are encountering some of that in your reading lives again. So today I just want to kind of go over our menu of things that you can do to help yourself figure out those tricky words. And then we're also going to look at the Be a Word Detective chart with some other ideas of what you can do with that. So let's take a look at rolling up our sleeves when we get a tricky word. I don't know if you remember this, boys and girls, but we revisited these charts way back in the fall. These are the things that great readers do when they encounter tricky words. If you're reading along, especially in nonfiction, you might have to use some of these strategies. And if you remember, we don't always use just one. Sometimes we have to use more than one at the same time to help us understand what the word is and knowing how to pronounce it. So the first thing we want to do is just check the picture and think about what might make sense here. Now, I know readers, we're getting into more chapter book work. Sometimes a picture isn't going to be there and isn't going to be available to you to help check that work. So we might have to use what's happening in the story to help us with that word. We also need to use our phonics rules. We need to go through the word part by part and then put it back together. We're going to revisit how to be a word detective part by part in just a moment to revisit how we do that. You might look for smaller words inside a word. Remember, boys and girls, we're working on our comprehension. We don't want to just skip it and give up. We need to take a guess and give it a try. After we reread the tricky word within a sentence, we're going to think to ourselves, does it look right? Does it sound right? And does it make sense? Say it with me again. Does it look right? Does it sound right? Does it make sense? We could use vowel teams and try a different vowel team to help us. We discovered in phonics this year that vowel teams make tons of different sounds. So might have to play around with what those sounds might be. And then don't just say the word, figure out what they mean too. Because again, reading is understanding what the writer wants to teach us or wants us to know. If we're not understanding what we're reading, we're not really reading. So when we look through the whole word part by part, we're going to have to do some other different things too. So let's revisit our word detective chart and see what kinds of things we need to do with those tricky words. We could use our snap word knowledge and look for patterns that might be in the word that are in the same snap words that we know. We could break it into syllables. We learned in phonics that syllable chunking can really help break down what that word might mean. We can take off those common endings and figure out the rest. We know that words might end in ing or an ed. Taking off just that part might help ease the work of trying to figure out that tricky word. We can also use parts of words. We can find a word inside of a word. That kind of goes back to knowing our snap words too, especially with this word. And then think about, is this like a word I know? In our phonics word books, you remember we organized those by parts. So what does this look like in our reading? Well, I'm going to show you. I'm going to remind you what that looks like with strange and amazing plants. And actually, this is going to be a book. Don't tell anybody. But this is going to be the book that I am going to read tomorrow, kind of in honor of Earth Day, in honor of my daughter's birthday is actually tomorrow, because she loves plants. I'm going to read this book and post it on Class Dojo in the school story for everybody to see, but this is going to be one you're going to want to look out for. So I'm going to open up to actually the very first page of this book. This was written by Catherine Knight, and in here she organizes the information she gives us into different categories. If you remember, the headings tell us what we're going to read about and give us the category of what's going to be in there. So back here on the first page, it starts out with strange and amazing. It says, plants are amazing life forms. With just water, air, sunlight, and soil, they grow into a variety of shapes, colors, and sizes. Plants survive in all kinds of environments, from cold, snowy mountains to dry deserts to murky swamplands. So after I was done reading the main text, which we always do for nonfiction books, I went back up to the photograph and started to read the caption that was with that, and that's when I noticed a very tricky word. Our brains are so good at recognizing that, you will be able to clue into that right away. So right here at the top, let me see if I can get real close. Take a look at those two words. A lot of times plants and animals are given a special word that came from a long time ago. And then over time, people renamed these plants and animals using more common, easy to pronounce words, basically. So right here, you'll notice in the parentheses, it says bald cypress, but right above that are those really tricky words. So when I got there, I had to think about, what is going to help me? Well, obviously, looking at this photograph, that doesn't help me with those long words at all. I actually jumped right here to look through the whole word part by part, and I had to break it down that way to be able to reread it. So I looked at the first part, and I noticed that first chunk, tax. That was pretty easy to get. And then taxo. And then taxodium. Well, I know from reading these kinds of old, complicated words, a lot of times the I is read and said like an E, like a long E. So I went back and kind of fixed that again. So taxodium, not too bad. And then, whoa, this next part was really hard. I had to really take my finger and cover up the rest of the word as I went along to help me keep track. So we have dis. Cover up that part. Oh, now I see stitch in there. Let's see. Distitch. And then at the very end, distitchum. Taxidium distichum, otherwise called bald cypress. So that's telling me that's the name of that tree that's growing in this photograph of the southeastern United States. So I know this really doesn't grow around Michigan. This is south on the map in the warmer climates, and east, let's see, west is California, east is Maine. So down, and probably when I think about the map of the United States, Florida, Georgia, somewhere in that area. So now I know that comes from that spot. So when you get to tricky words, friends, just a reminder, you need to use your tricky word, roll up your sleeves menu. Don't just skip it. Go back and figure it out. Ways you can show me this work this week. Take a picture of a really tricky word and maybe make a pronunciation guide for it. Put it in parentheses and chunk it out and then show me that way. Have mom or dad make a video of you reading out loud and showing, just like I showed, how you figured out that word. In your writing this week, lots of different ideas, but remember, you can still work on one piece across time. You don't have to do a different piece of writing every day. Parents, if you're looking for some ways to help them with their writing, I know I had a couple of writers this week struggle with just really getting to work. I had to come up with some strategies here at our house on how to do that, so I could share that with you if that's what you need. Challenge this week, I want you to try to find maybe some nonfiction titles that you haven't used quite yet. Remember, you've got access to Epic, Raz Kids, really any online digital sources that you can find, real books if you have any that you haven't gotten into yet. And then thinking ahead about math, I know there were some tricky things in the lessons that I assigned last week with the in-out boxes. One piece of advice I want to give you for the in-out boxes, if you get any more like that, I know there's a timer that's timing you doing your math. Don't worry about that. Mrs. Cook is not looking at how long it's taking you. That doesn't matter to me. In-out boxes are something new that we haven't used really a lot before. So just slow down, take your time, work it out on paper if that helps you, and then answer the question before you move on. I have assigned 3 new lessons for this week in math and IXL. And then as always, make sure you're getting in your 5 minutes a day of adding and subtraction to 20. You have lots of different resources to help you with that. They're listed right there in your at-home learning plan. And finally, to end our lesson today, I said every week we're going to just do kind of a new fun quote to get our brains thinking about that. Last week it was, "It always seems impossible until it's done." And then this week, I wanted to share with you this one. This is by Ralph Marston, and it says, "What you do today can improve all your tomorrows." So the choices that you're making and the things that you're doing can only help you in the future. I love you, I miss you, and I can't wait to see you on Friday, and watch out for our read aloud coming to you on Wednesday. See you later.